My name is James.
Yes, in each episode we choose a different poet. We each choose a poem from that poet, and then we bring it to the table, discuss it, chop it up, and just discuss the poet a little bit and what we thought the last couple weeks reading him. So this week we got Edwin Arlington Robinson, who sorry to cut you off. I was just gonna say in his lifetime he went by EA, so that
Mm,
was actually post death. An editor called him referred to him as Edwin Arlington Robinson, and it stuck. So
okay, I didn't know that. I did not know that.
first fun fact.
You know, E. A. Robinson. I've
Mm-hmm.
actually, I like to try to read, works by the poet, like at least a book or
Mm-hmm.
something, or
Mm-hmm.
I read as much as I can. And
Yeah.
his first book, Children of the Night, I believe it was his first book. I read that, and I it's quickly became one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite works, just for how varied it is. There's sonnets in there, octets, little like blurbs, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
little
Mm-hmm.
things he was thinking of, little couplets. I think there's just a lot of different types of poetry, and
Mm-hmm.
they cover like a lot of different kind of philosophical territory. So I was just wondering, are the children of the night
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
poems in the book?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I read Children of the Night as well. Published 1897. Right before the turn of the century. And I wondered too about the Children of the Night. Maybe it was kind of like similar to say who did the Spoon River anthology. I'm blanking on his name right now, but the
I'm not
Spoon
sure.
the Spoon River anthology where he has all these sort of characters. Like famous version of that is Miniver Chibi.
Mm-hmm.
And the poem is sort of is this kind of this caricature of this person. And I don't know if those are the children of the night. I don't know if sort of um, we maybe we all are the children of the night in some way, but you
Are
know
the thoughts themselves the thoughts
mm,
that went
mm, mm-hmm.
into the poem? Because they're
Perhaps, yeah.
often a bit, like they're a bit dark. Like he can bend a bit darker.
I
Uh,
think, and yeah, and I wonder if there isn't something with that kind of being almost like maybe these are the fruits of the fruits of chaos, the fruits of a dark time. These are the
mm,
children of the night. And
oh,
maybe the
okay,
maybe the,
okay.
the poems are that. This is the fruit. This is what the seeds from the from the nighttime, from the dark time, the the chaos. So because he kind of
Because
he yeah. Go
that would
ahead.
make sense because he wasn't necessarily like the happiest of gentlemen.
Mm, mm,
He didn't have the most fortunate life.
mm,
I
mm-hmm,
believe his
mm-hmm.
parents died when he was kind of young, and
Right.
one
Yep.
his both his his brothers ended up kind of
Mm-hmm,
dying and
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
having like sort of family trouble.
Right.
So he was never necessarily you know the happiest of individuals. So maybe the night is a time period in his life, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe is the whole of his life.
Perhaps. Um, he does have this sort of biting, sort of kind of sense of humor.
Mm,
There is a little bit of humor in them, but it's definitely it's you don't it's not laughing with you all the time. Um,
right.
and so I wonder if that there might be some kind of connection between him and Edgar Allan Poe in that regard, and also having a dark life and being Capricorns or something like that. They have this
Mm,
like sort of I don't know if that's a little bit of a reach there,
I
but
don't know.
it's interesting.
It is
Um,
interesting. I've also found some parallels in their work, but I feel like
mm-hmm,
whereas Edgar Allan Poe might be a little bit more cosmic,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
the world was like dark, and there's like
right,
darkness and
yeah,
like around the corner, and
yeah, these
you know
ultimate dualies.
exactly. But for E.A. Robinson, I think the darkness might have been a little bit more within these characters' heads or within his
Mm-hmm,
own head.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, Edgar Allan Poe could be a bit psychological, but you know, E.A. Robinson definitely gives us these detailed psychological like
Mm-hmm. Right.
profiles. You know,
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think he kind of shows his sort of kind of genius there for being able to kind of read people and kind of give us these characters that sort of kind of stand the test of time a little bit, and that's why some of these poems like Miniver Chibi have are still so popular, because we still know that character who wishes that he was born in a different time, and spends most of his time drunk
right?
each night, which speaking to the family issues you had sort of briefly touched on earlier, that poem is likely about his older brother, who funnily enough married the I guess the love of his life, because
Mm,
EA, he didn't get married, he never
right.
married, and yet he asked this girl for her hand, I think it like 3 times total, um, before he upped and moved to New York and just you know focused on the poetry career, which I don't think Children of the Night. I think Children of the Night might be his second publication. I don't know if it might be his
Mm,
first official book, but I think it's his second publication. But I'm pretty certain that it's his first one after moving to New York.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
And also interesting, I believe, and when he died, I think he left like all his money to that same lady. So
Hey,
bit of a,
it, you
bit of
know,
a, you know,
I don't know, man.
bit of a lover boy,
When it's love, it's love. I mean, hey, you'll
right?
do anything. I
Right.
guess he figured. Yeah.
Love unrequited, to say the
Yes. Yes.
least.
He did have yeah, I read, I can't remember where, like a little blurb about him having some, he did have relationships with women later on in life, and with one artist in particular, and I'm blanking on her name, but she's a visual artist that he had a kind of a romance with, who did some stuff sort of for him after he died, sort of in memoriam of him. So
Mm,
um, he wasn't like an altogether like chaste individual, but he never married.
mm.
So I guess he never loved, after that.
And in a, but and oddly enough, it wasn't, and it also wasn't out of some religious impulse for why
Right,
he was
right,
chased.
right.
He wasn't necessarily a very religious person either.
Yeah, I mean he does have some religious allusions, but he's not like William Blake by any
Right,
means.
right,
He's
right.
not like I don't think he's an outright atheist by any means. He in Children of the Night, several of his poems he does refer
Mm,
to God. It's seemingly like Christian God, but yeah, I don't know that he is like a kind of devout individual.
I would say that his allusions to God are almost like forces of nature, as opposed to like a personal God that one would have a relationship with.
Mm, mm,
But I think like at the time he was definitely, for the time, right around the early, late 1800s, early 1900s, he was definitely less religious than the people around him.
mm, mm. Yeah. Well, one thing too about that Children of the Night, it did attract the attention of President Teddy Roosevelt, because his son was a big fan of it. Which, when I was reading it, I was thinking like I could see this being maybe popular with like young men, maybe
Mm,
of the time, when all you had was to like read,
right.
that sort of,
I could
yeah,
see that. I didn't think
yeah,
that while I was reading it, but I could see that being
yeah,
popular amongst like, college age guys.
right, yeah, yeah, like like maybe younger, like people who would be reading such stuff, and so um, because of that, Teddy Roosevelt gave him a desk job, basically, that where he had no like a I think it's like pronounced sinecure or something like that,
Mm,
where it's um essentially like it started in the Catholic Church, but it's like a desk job, like a title without responsibility,
mm,
and so
mm,
to just allow him to, basically it was like a handshake, tacit agreement that he would just focus on, improving American letters, and which was like $2,000 a year. And I looked it up today. That's $77,000 a year, which is,
Wow.
mind blowing. Just
Right.
get 77,000 a year, and that was 2,000 at that time. So then I did like the reverse, and I was like, okay, so what's $2,000 in today's money? It's $52. So just if you wanted to have a feel good, something to take home with you from this episode, just think that $52 today was the equivalent of 2,000, about 100 years ago, and today 2,000 is worth 77,000. Their 2,000 is worth 77,000 for us.
Inflation.
Yeah.
But what wasn't inflated was how good this poetry was.
Right. And you know what? We should get on to the poems, huh?
But I think, and that was also the only time a sitting president reviewed a work of poetry, I believe.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I
like
didn't know that.
so. Maybe it's a sitting. It's for sure a sitting president, but
Oh,
it
okay.
may be the only president to ever review poetry. Period. Maybe Teddy
Interesting.
Roosevelt. So,
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Well,
so
hey.
this guy had a multi. He had a varied life. He kind of,
Yeah.
he knows poverty,
Mm-hmm.
alcoholism, but
Mm-hmm.
also
Mm-hmm.
sort of the heights of acclaim. He rubbed shoulders with the
Mm-hmm.
likes of Robert Frost. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, Robert Frost posthumously pinned the forward to one of his later books that
Right.
that was released. So, we know this is a guy who kind of ran the gamut.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, he didn't die in the gutter like Edgar
Mm-hmm.
Allan Poe,
Right.
but
Right. Right.
he did sort of have the rough life of Edgar Allan Poe, and he wasn't necessarily, and he wasn't necessarily like a someone who was like a strict academic. I mean, like you maybe a
Mm-hmm.
Robert Frost or someone like that. But he was definitely someone who was a learned person and ended up being acclaimed throughout his life. So
Yeah. Yeah. He did go to Harvard, but I think he only spent like 2 years there. I
right,
don't believe he graduated. Um, yeah.
and he went there like when they had some program where you could attend classes but not get a diploma.
Yeah. Yeah. He did do something kind of. Yeah. He did do something. Yeah. He did something like that.
So he wasn't like the
Yeah.
strictest of academics, but
Right. Right. Yeah. I think he went there like just with the sole goal of, from what I read, was to like get published in their magazine that they had there,
okay,
where
okay,
they like publish student work and stuff. So to get a poem published, which he did, which I think
all
was
right,
like Ballad of the Ship.
okay, okay.
So and I believe that's in Children of the Night.
All
But
right.
yeah. So yeah, dude. I think. Sorry, excuse me. I think at this point, let's dig into our poems.
Yeah, okay. Without further ado, I think I went first last week.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, okay, yeah. You're the garden. They're both. I think both the poems we're doing today are from Children of the Night. I believe. Yeah,
Yes.
they are. You're
I got
actually
this.
doing a sonnet, Children
Mm-hmm.
of the
Oh,
Garden.
dude, don't take it from me. I was gonna say it was a sonnet.
One of the sonnets. There's a son in Children of the Night. There's a section of sonnets,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I said that before, but there's sections of sonnets, then they'll do
Mm-hmm.
sections of like 16 line 4x4 poems, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sections of octets. So
Right. He's got a long poem in
oh,
here.
well, pardon me. Let me share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm over here just looking. Let me allow the audience to also take a quick
Right.
the
Okay.
garden.
So, The Garden by Edwin Arlington Robinson. There's a fenceless garden overgrown with buds and blossoms and all sorts of leaves. And once, among the roses and the sheaves, the gardener and I were there alone. He led me to the plot where I had thrown the fennel of my days on wasted ground, and in that riot of sad weeds I found the fruitage of a life that was my own. My life! Ah, yes, there was my life, indeed, and there were all the lives of humankind, and they were like a book that I could read, whose every leaf, miraculously signed, outrolled itself from thought's eternal seed, love rooted in God's garden of the mind.
I
So,
like the rhyme scheme.
yeah.
I mean, we have the it's a bit of a a different spin on the Italian sonnet, but I
Yeah.
just I love how
Yep.
he did the rhyme, the last six lines, the rhyme scheme of that.
hmm
Indeed, kind, read, sign, seed, mine.
He writes a lot of the, Italian or like Petrarchan sonnets, and he varies that rhyme scheme, especially
Mm-hmm.
in that sestet. He varies it like it
Mm-hmm.
through each one is like a different rhyme scheme, which is like he had one that was like a B C C B
Mm.
A B A C C B. I kind of like that.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, this one it's what this is A B A kind signed, yeah, A B A
Or ABBA. Um.
indeed
C.
kind read. Oh, I was just looking at the sestet.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it's ABABAB. Indeed,
Yeah.
kind, read, sign, seed, mine. It's almost like takes that last little stinger of the English sonnet and makes the
hmm
whole sestet that
hmm
the little couplet of the English sonnet.
Yeah, and I do like when with a quatrain when it's that A B B A. I do
Mm-hmm.
like those. It's just like to kind of break it up.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't like them all the time when I was younger, but I get a
hmm
little as I get older, I start to kind of like them.
Yeah, and this one he goes, yeah, it's A B B A C C A.
Right.
Hmm.
So yeah, I like the poem a lot, and I think it's like a beautiful image. It's an image that is often, I'd say this is like sort of an image that we've covered on this podcast before.
It is. It is.
Maybe
And that's why I did it.
twice.
Yeah,
The
and
image
that's why
of
I
the
did it.
garden.
And I think I'm a little bit attracted, to this because one of my favorite K. Ryan poems is a certain kind of Eden. You know,
Mm.
but I don't know if did you read that one though? Did you do
I
that?
mean, a certain kind of Eden leaves
I-
us thrall,
yeah,
left us
uh
thrall. I think I
yeah,
did. I think I may have read that one. Yeah.
yeah. That's one of my favorites. And I had sent this to you about a week ago, and mentioned, I guess, I'm getting a little peek behind the curtains, but mentioned, both of us were big fans of Sly and the Family Stone, and
Mm-hmm.
so they had this album. It's fresh? I think
Right.
like 72 or 74, right?
Yeah. 70,
Somewhere.
72, 72, 74, somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think exactly.
And man, they have this track In Time on there. He talks about the the mind of it's a junkyard in the mind of a quitter, and I kind of think
Mm.
of this too because this is sort of, and in Kay Ryan's poem, you think you can, choose, what to grow. um oh, I remember it's you've overprized intention, taken every bent you've been given. It's just this sort of kind of sense of Eden. Like we think that we're able to just uproot a garden and leave it behind, but it still grows. And that's kind of
Mm.
a little bit what that poem touches on. And this poem similarly too. Like he's gone to a part. It's a little bit of a junkyard. This is This is wasted ground, and um, I just love the idea, and this is where, this is like kind of like touches in on like maybe like a Christian God, right? In
Right.
with the Garden of Eden, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's kind of the gardener, and so him in this this fenceless garden, because like a garden is that's almost a contradiction too,
Exactly.
the fenceless garden, because
Exactly.
a garden is something that has been um, this is like it's German, right? Garden is, and
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten is German, right? And like this is like something in which like talking about like growing things up. It's like
Mm.
it's like it's very nature of the word, like it is touched by human hands, and so for something to be fenceless, that's almost like saying it's wild, but a garden is
Right.
not that, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, overgrown, this thing's overgrown, and uh I just him in the garden, there's the gardener. He is not the gardener, but he is
Mm-hmm.
somehow he's been able to plant there, I guess, but
With a
it
capital G.
right, yeah, exactly, yeah, good point, yeah, the gardener with a capital G, and him being there alone with him,
Mm.
you know I feel like that's even something, being alone, like with God, or him
Right.
seeing maybe a part of his life in which when he just threw the fennel, threw these seeds, and and it's kind of goes back to one of those allusions. I should have looked it up, but from Jesus when he talks about you know um, if a farmer were to throw seeds on the ground, and which seeds would be eaten up by the crows, which seeds would burn in the sun,
Mm.
and these are the seeds that he threw that would be eaten by crows and burned by the sun. He thought that they were you know dead and gone, but no, this is the fruitage of his own life, actually.
Right.
He didn't realize what he was doing at that time was seeding the future, in a way.
Mm.
It's kind of like, I feel like if you've ever been, in a place where maybe, for lack of a better term, yeah, I guess you were alone with the gardener, and you think like, damn, how did I get here?
Mm.
You see
You
some
know, and
things like, man, I thought that I was just fucking around. I didn't realize that, you know, that would bring to
the garden
this.
is a very powerful metaphor
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
poetry.
Uh-huh.
But what's interesting about this is oftentimes the poet will imagine themselves as the gardener, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
their
Yeah.
poetry or their works are
Yeah.
the garden.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But in this one, the gardener is almost like God or the universe or some sort of
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
spirit or essence
Right.
of the universe. And the
Uh-huh.
poet themselves, I kind of read this as the poet being a plant within the garden,
Mm-hmm.
and
Hmm.
almost but almost like the plant has died, or the plant has withered away or something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the plant is no longer necessarily there in the garden with the other plant, but the plant is in this sort of higher realm where the gardener and the plant can kind of reflect on the year or the time that was spent. And there was a because when plants die, part of their maturation process, they sort of put out their seeds, they kind of let their
Mm-hmm.
seeds go.
Mm-hmm.
And the gardener's taken this plant that has spent its seeds and wasted its seeds, and the fruitage of his life might be among the sad weeds. But this is sort of it might be a little too late for the plant to necessarily do anything about it, but almost like just reflect the same
Mm-hmm.
way that we're sort of reflecting on the gardener may reflect on the plants in the garden. We have a almost I read this as a plant sort of reflecting on its own life.
Mm. Okay. Okay.
Because how are the gardener and I alone in the garden full of leaves and sheaves?
You know,
This is almost a plant that has like wings and a halo on it now, looking back at its garden that it grew up in.
hmm, that is interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. I guess I kind of pictured almost sort of like a child, like maybe this like cherubic figure that with this older gardener, um,
Mm.
and him like leading. him to the plot where I had thrown the fennel of my days on wasted ground. Um,
And I imagine,
like,
because throwing your fennel is like, pine trees.
mm-hmm,
When they drop the pine cones, those are the
mm-hmm,
seeds.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
this eye has
It's
seeds. It
yeah,
has fruitage.
yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it is interesting. I guess I was seeing it kind of. I mean, it that could be that could be it. That could be it. Um, and I guess I was kind of picturing more of this, maybe like an more human like eye, and this being a bit more metaphorical, but it could be. I mean, it'd still be metaphorical, but
Right, right.
it would it very well could be that it is a plant that's kind of gone to heaven more or less. You know.
because because in some ways, like when you see like the leftovers of a plant, or when you see
Hmm.
the seeds of a plant, like
Hmm.
you're seeing almost like its whole life.
Hmm. Hmm.
You're seeing almost like that plant's decision making. When you see, like, if you were to see seeds that were eaten up by crows or burned in the sun, you
Hmm.
see like that plant's decision making. You see, like, you can see it rolled out neatly as if it were a book that you could read,
Hmm.
whose every
Right. Right.
leaf was sort of miraculously signed.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be. Yeah.
And that's why I feel like poets are often drawn to plants, in as far as symbolism, is because plants have this fourth dimensionalness to them. Plants, they incorporate time. Like, you can when you take a look at vines, you're not just seeing the vine, you're seeing all the seconds that it took for it to grow that long. So there's this fourth dimensional quality to plants that I think is almost like, the same would be like as if you could look at your life from the fourth dimension and see your birth to your death in one go.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that does make sense with the plant. Being maybe being from a plant, and I guess it does also. Um,
The fruit,
it's just sort of analogous, to
right?
sorry, to human life as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think if you take that a step further, go with it being maybe from the perspective of a dead plant, it's almost like a bit more straightforward. But
Because like the first six lines, I mean, pardon me, the first eight lines, we almost have, we're almost setting up for the plant's like realizing what it's looking at,
hmm.
and it realizes that the seeds of its life have really just become sad weeds.
Hmm.
The fruit, and those the fruitage of a life that was my own. And then
Right.
the answer to this is my life is, wow, that was my life indeed. Like, that was, when you see a dead plant with some of its seeds spilled over here, some of its fruit spilled over here, and it's like wilting away, you're like, wow, this is that plant's entire life. So the back six lines are kind of like an answer to that.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Even if your life is sad and miserable and wasted, it still is some way belong to you. And it still in some ways is still in the garden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Well, what more can be said? I think we tied a bow on that one. Um, so yeah, that's hey, I love that sonnet. I love that imagery.
Me
Um,
too.
I think it's
From thoughts eternal
right.
seed.
Yeah. Yep. Hmm. Yeah, I love that too. That the riot of sad weeds. That again, that kind of chaos, force. Um,
That
that the riot is.
when I read those last two lines of the octet, and in that riot of sad weeds I found the fruitage of a life that was my own, I almost imagine like looking around like just like a completely destroyed like room, like and like like your room's like all messed up and you think like everything's like gone to hell, but
Mm,
that is your life. Even if everything's gone to hell and it's just a riot of sad weeds, it's like that is still your life. And even if it's not too pretty, it still is in the garden.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's true.
And then, there were all the lives of humankind, this
Mm-hmm.
flower and
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
flower. And, some people are these bright, beautiful flowers, and some people are
Right.
these glorious fruit bearing
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
I might just be a bunch of sad weeds, but
Right, right, right.
that's still my life,
Yeah,
even if
yeah.
it's just a bunch of sad
Yep.
weeds.
Yep, it is a fenceless garden. So,
A fenceless garden, almost like a holy trinity.
or play, yeah, without ending.
But yeah, man, this is a great poem. Great
Mm-hmm.
poem.
All right. Well, hey, you want to? Yeah, let's move on
Eh,
to the one you brought to the table here.
The poem that I brought to the table is the classic,
Right.
not Men of Achieve, the other one, Richard
Mm-hmm.
Corey.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's why
Both.
I neglected saying it during the intro.
Well, you were saying Men of Achieve,
Right. Exactly. I
but
didn't want I didn't want to steal your thunder.
no, no, dude. Edwin Arlington Robinson's Thunder. And man, it was roaring over the last couple weeks. I was like
Mm-hmm.
going back and rereading. Like I was really enjoying some of this poetry, man.
Yeah.
But Richard Corey, this is a poem that I read in school, and I know this is one that the administration or whoever writes textbooks, I know they hemmed and hawed before they put this one in. And I assume you read this one in school too, Justin.
Yeah. Yep.
Can you imagine the administrators or whoever hemming and hawing before they put this one in the book? It's so salient and so good and
Yeah.
so accessible and can
Mm-hmm.
show children the power of poetry at such a young age, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
just so dark.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, we really should all strive to be rich and have all the best things of life. So, I mean, I don't think its message is appropriate for children.
Well, luckily on Verse Take, you guys are
Right.
not kids.
Right. Yeah.
Or we don't assume so.
Right. Yeah. And if you are, that's fine too. But you know.
Right. We're probably teaching you better than
Right.
those hacks at that school ever
Right.
could.
Yeah. Exactly. Those quacks.
Yeah, I said hacks. I meant
I know.
quacks. All
Well,
right.
hack is good. Works too.
Yeah, they're hacks. They're not really. They're just collecting a check, man.
Yeah.
Some of those teachers, they're just in it for the money.
And it's not a lot.
No, sir, it's not.
Yeah.
But this is Richard Cory by Edwin Arlington Robinson.
Let's do it.
And I will be reading it. Whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman from soul to crown, clean favored and imperially slim. And he was always quietly arrayed, and he was always human when he talked. But still he fluttered pulses when he said, "Good morning," and he glittered when he walked. And he was rich, yes, richer than a king, and admirably schooled in every grace. In fine, we thought that he was everything to make us wish that we were in his place. So on we worked and waited for the light, and went without meat and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head.
Yeah.
Richard Cory by
Yeah.
Edward Arlington Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
You go first with first impressions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, obviously, this is one that just it leaves you. I remember reading this one. I remember reading it. I was at Francis Marion University when I first actually read this one. I didn't read this one in high school. I don't think so. I think it might have. No, I think this is one that I just read in college. And so I remember it sticking with me. At the time, it kind of hits you. Similarly, one of Mice and Men. I think
Mm.
when Lenny puts that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shoots George in the back of the head. I remember being in like the cafeteria at study hall, like, and I'm just like, damn. Everyone, like, bells ringing, everyone's getting up, walking away, and I'm like, oh, fuck, how do I get up and go to the next class right now?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, so this one just hits you at the end, and it's not like shock value. There is shock value, but it's not like it shocks you, But I don't. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like it's not obscene, you know.
Mm.
But I love the progression of this one,
Mm-hmm.
really from A to B to C to D. Each quatrain builds it up, and then that last, and he breaks it down like just he just breaks it down in this one. It's so like um, symmetrical in a way, but that
Right.
last couplet is what really hits you in the gut. So just
Right.
great pacing, great movement, great build up, and the imagery, and like we were saying earlier, that eye, that sort of that he's able to sort of analyze and give you this sort of psychoanalysis, this psychological profile. There's a reason why these still stick to us with us today over 100 years later.
Right. And one thing that sticks out to me is just like how accessible this poem is for
Mm-hmm,
like we've talked about it before on this podcast.
mm-hmm,
Even though I don't write many of these myself, I love the 4 lines, 4 stanzas.
yeah,
It's almost like you can't. This is just straightforward. Like
right,
this is
right,
just like what we think of as a poem.
right,
16
right.
lines, 4 lines, four
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
stanzas, and like you
Yep,
mentioned, the pacing. We are
yep.
introduced to Richard Corey.
Mm-hmm,
He talks a little bit more about him, his effect on the people. He
yep.
talks about how the people felt about him, and
Uh-huh,
then we get
uh-huh.
the conclusion to what happened
Right,
to Richard Corey.
right. Yeah, yep.
Um,
Yeah,
whenever Richard Corey went downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. What's interesting to me is Richard Corey went downtown, and
mm-hmm,
then we, the people on the pavement, looked
mm-hmm,
at him. It's
mm-hmm.
almost like they're looking up at him. It doesn't say looked up at
Right,
him,
exactly.
but it almost, as we go on, it'll almost be
Mm-hmm,
kind of
mm-hmm,
illustrating a sort of
mm-hmm,
looking up to.
mm-hmm,
He
mm-hmm.
was a gentleman from soul to crown, clean favored and imperially slim. What I love about that is like the descriptions of Richard Corey, they go from basic to extreme. They get more and more and more. The mythology of Richard Corey builds and builds as we go down these stanzas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because at first he's a gentleman,
Right.
but instantly he was a gentleman from soul to crown.
Mm-hmm,
He goes
mm-hmm.
from being a gentleman to having a crown on to
Right.
being clean favored, almost like
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
favored by God, and imperially
Right,
slim.
right, right. Yep.
He in 2 lines he goes from a gentleman to an emperor, damn near.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and also from soul, right? And that can have two
Right,
meanings. From the bottom of his feet, or the soul,
right, right,
to crown, top of the head, or is he, he's sort of a, this regal figure,
right.
that we're seeing, almost like he's like this guy's been touched by God, like and I
Clean
mean,
favored.
right, yeah, clean favored, and I mean, it's like this picture of this like impeccable, distinguished
Right.
guy, like you almost think of, American Psycho, you know, you know,
Right, right.
he doesn't, in the sense of like the meticulousness with his appearance.
How he seems as if someone that's so clean cut, like these guys in these suits down
Hmm.
on Wall Street
Right.
or Madison Avenue, or wherever these
Uh-huh.
these rich, I don't know where
Uh-huh.
these rich people work, but
Right. Right.
you know
Yeah. That, in a skyscraper in New York, right? No
right,
way he could
exactly.
no way he could commit those heinous murders. Who would believe it?
and and as we move into the second stanza, it's almost like we get things like he starts almost being described via oxymorons because and he was always quietly arrayed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when someone is arrayed, when you think of something as
Right.
arrayed,
Yeah.
you think it's like spread out.
Yeah. 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 And also, uh, like almost like adorned. You know,
Right.
and it almost is like it's spread out, stands out.
But he was quietly arrayed.
Right. Yeah.
Like there was almost like a subtle halo around him,
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
subtle glow.
Right. Right.
And the oxymorons sort of continue, and he was always human when he talked.
Mm-hmm.
Who else speaks besides humans?
Right. Right.
But this is
Mm-hmm.
almost like when they refer to Jesus as the Son of Man, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was always human when he talked. This
Right.
elevated figure
Right.
still was able to speak like a human being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It almost, the quietly arrayed, I think, in going on with the human when he talked, almost sort of alludes to this, self consciousness that um, he must have had.
Mm,
It's almost like kind of purposeful. He wasn't showy, but he
right.
almost couldn't help himself but be arrayed.
Mm-hmm.
But it was quiet. It was a little bit more sort of demure.
Right.
And he was always human when he talked. Right? I mean, yeah, you're right. He was down to earth almost. I feel like they're saying.
Mm. But still,
Mm-hmm.
he fluttered
Right.
pulses when he said, "Good morning."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something as simple as a good morning
Uh
would
huh.
flutter someone's pulse. Good morning, Mr. Corey, sir.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he glittered when he walked.
Yeah.
So that's the first two stanzas. And as we move into the third stanza, now the impossibilities mount. Now, and he was rich. Yes, richer than a king. His name is Richard Corey. Rich.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Richard Corey.
Right.
He's
Right.
Richard,
Uh-huh.
Richard
Right.
richer than a
Right.
king. You know, and admirably schooled in every grace.
Right. Yep.
In fine, that's a phrase that comes from the French "enfin,"
Mm.
which means in the end. Like in the end, when it's all said and done.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, when it's all said and done, we thought he was everything to make us wish that we were in his place.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this is brilliant foreshadowing. Brilliant. How is there foreshadowing in a 16 line work?
Right.
I'm telling
Right.
the
Mm-hmm.
prescience of human
Mm-hmm.
beings
Mm-hmm.
flabbergasts me sometimes.
Right.
Because
Right.
let's look at the end. Went
Mm-hmm.
home and put a bullet through his head. That's the end.
Mm-hmm.
In enfin, and they said it in French. French is always English's fancy, more elevated, exalted older brother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the French phrase in enfin, in fine, in the end, when everything's all said and done, in our fancy moments, we wish we were there where he was in his fancy house.
Right.
But in his fancy house, in the end, there's a bullet in his head. Brilliant
Mm-hmm.
foreshadowing, my God.
Mm-hmm.
So on we worked and waited for the light. And I love that too. Waited for the light, which is in some ways what Richard Corey was also doing. Richard Corey was also waiting for the light, waiting for something to happen, day in, day out. They see him, you know, they're they're waiting, they waited for the light. They're waiting for something to happen, waiting for anything to happen. They went without meat and cursed the bread. And Richard Corey, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. The bullet is the loud exclamation point at the end of this poem, is almost like the loud exclamation that disrupted the calm summer night, just as the bullet disrupted the calm poem. The light they were waiting for, it's almost like the light of an idea. They didn't think the light of their idea would be the same light of the gun flash. But, you know, so the light of the gun flash gave them the idea in their head that a light bulb went off that
Mm-hmm.
it's not all what it's cracked up to be.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I think administrators today would, him and haw about putting this one in there because, I mean, we got to keep on working for that light.
So on we worked and waited for the light, and
Yeah.
went without the meat and cursed the bread.
Mm-hmm.
They went without the meat
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
cursed the bread.
Yeah.
It could have just been and went without meat.
Mm-hmm.
That would have just been not having the food you want. But when you go without the meat, it's almost like they're going without the meaning. They're going without the what they can really sink their teeth into. And they
Mm-hmm.
cursed the bread. They
Right.
cursed what they did have.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Almost like yeah, this like real nourishment. They're sort of stuck with these sort of empty, kind of empty calories.
Empty intimations of
Mm.
people like Richard Corey.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a fantastic poem, and
Great,
also showing,
fantastic.
not only just the this sort of artistry of it, and it is almost like mathematical, the way this thing is broken
Right.
down, but also just with it's accessible in the sense that anyone can read this, anyone could I feel like could understand this, to a degree, like to some degree, would understand that Richard Corey was everything that they wanted, um, anyone who's like blue collar, grew up blue collar, probably
Mm,
understands this,
right.
and in today's age, and then to see the guy who's like, say like, these are people who work construction, and then this guy's like a lawyer in town, and then the lawyer in town
Right.
ends up killing himself, and we're like, damn. Well, I thought that
Right.
guy was. I mean, he was a lawyer. He had a
I
big
thought he
house,
had everything.
right? Yeah, exactly. Um, but also to show us that hey, materialism. I mean, it's not gonna save you. Um, the I almost think of this Richard Corey guy as someone who's like very, very so maybe even very rule oriented. Just the way he's sort of has this meticulous, impeccable appearance. He might have been someone who he might have been like a real high strung guy. I don't know. Um,
Mm.
you know, in order
Well, he
to,
was definitely neurotic in some ways.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. In a way to, make himself to be this thing. Like he almost made himself out. He made himself into like something that people would want.
Mm.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. He's an interesting character. He kind of brought about his own demise in a way. I
That's an interesting reading.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people read Richard Corey as a bit more sympathetic. They say,
Mm,
none of the people ever really talked to him. None of the people ever really, went and tried to, ask him, how he was feeling. They were always sort of standoffish.
mm, mm.
Could there be a little sentiment like it's better to have the worst house in the good neighborhood as opposed to having the best house in the bad neighborhood? Did Richard
Maybe.
Corey have the nice house in the bad neighborhood?
Yeah, because I mean, you would imagine that he was the rich guy, in a town of peasants,
Yes, it's seemingly so,
right?
especially with all the king allusions, even in his
Uh huh.
name.
Uh huh. Uh huh. Right. Right. Yeah.
And it's another thing about the accessibility. Like the poem is so accessible, and I think the emotions of
Mhm.
envy are also very
Mhm.
accessible.
Mhm. Mhm. Right.
The feeling of this person has more than me. That's
Right.
also very accessible, and
Yep.
also the idea of suicide by gun is very
Mm.
accessible,
Mm. Mhm.
even in out, especially in our day and age.
Yeah. Still.
Those
Right. That is a good point.
like the accessibility of self harm
Right.
caused by
Right. Right.
gun violence.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and this class issue as well. That's kind of going on.
right, right. The have and the have nots.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
get it's definitely real easy these days to think you should
Right.
be in someone else's
Yeah.
place. Oh,
Yeah.
they don't deserve to be
Uh-huh.
there. I deserve to be there.
Hmm. Well, and again, too, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but it's one rich guy, seemingly one rich guy, and a lot of poor people.
Mm-hmm.
Because we people, you know,
Right.
that's what it is. It's we people. It's always referred to, we. There's no I in this poem.
Mm-mm. And, that's another thing. Like it's almost like Richard Corey's. He's almost not a person.
Right. Right.
He's human when he talks. So
Hmm.
human.
Hmm.
We on the pavement, we're people.
Hmm.
Richard
Hmm.
Corey is almost some sort of king. The king's almost some sort of creature.
Right. 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 And hey, I mean, maybe that's what kind of drives him to it. Maybe him being human, that might have been a performance.
Yeah, and that's the sympathetic reading, like
Right.
the fact that he was so alienated and no one could,
Hmm.
the money was preventing him from connecting truly. This is a recapitulation of the myth of King Midas, who had the
Hmm.
gold, and to everything he
Right.
touched would turn to gold. The
Right.
wealth, the opulence became a barrier to true connection.
Right.
So,
Right. Yep.
but you may
Yep.
be the first person I think I don't think you've given on this podcast, you've given the least sympathetic reading of Richard Corey I've come in contact with, by saying he brought it on him, maybe brought it on himself by, doing this or doing that. So that's interesting. I'm you know
I
you,
mean, I think that, yeah, I think there's a perspective of that, because his sort of self consciousness. I don't think he seems very intentional, and
mm,
so, um,
right.
I in almost some way, like, he hasn't gotten to where he is by accident. Uh,
Mm,
he seems like someone who would be very routine oriented, very rule oriented, and maybe he never allowed himself to be human. Maybe he never allowed himself to be animalistic in a way, or to have to, maybe he never really broke out. Maybe the suicide was his one act of rebellion.
okay, interesting, interesting. So I kind of see what you mean more, because at first I thought you were saying something more like maybe he enjoyed it a little bit when he fluttered pulses,
He may
but
have. He may have.
maybe, but now I see you're saying, like, maybe the suicide was the only way he could imagine life without the routine. Sort of it's almost like a capitalist realist reading of Richard Corey. It's easier for Richard Corey to imagine his death than a life without his routines and money and
Right. Right.
his quiet array.
Right. And I have a feeling he doesn't sound like someone who was born in poverty.
No, 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 no. And that's another point. This is a point in time where there were like these old families who were well known, but
Mm-hmm.
their money was drying up.
Mm-hmm.
And like late 1800s, early 1900s, people were getting money in other ways. So
Mm-hmm.
people who weren't necessarily the richest historically were able to
Mm-hmm.
get some money. So
Right.
the
Right.
social dynamics of Richard Corey set up works like The Great Gatsby.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And
So yeah,
Richard
man.
Corey's
I
kind of
mean,
a
Richard Corey.
Gatsby character.
You said what?
I said, yeah, and Richard Corey's kind of a Gatsby character.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe even almost Tom. I don't know if he has a little bit of Gatsby, a little bit of Tom too, because Tom was old money. Like
Exactly.
so,
No, yeah, that is a good point.
Richard Corey might be old money, but he might have new money problems, which is
Mm-hmm.
ends up self harm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gatsby was probably more likely to do the whole self harm, new
Right.
money,
Yeah.
type thing.
He was kind of like on a suicide mission in a way. Um,
So and that's interesting that Richard Corey is kind of a gap like that because Edwin Arlington Robinson himself is a gap between sort of that romantic time to the modern
mm,
time.
yeah, yeah, that is true.
His subject matter is very modern. But his format and the structure of his poems is very romantic, sticking to the
Hmm.
sonnets and the octets and stuff like that.
Right, right, and he does have like some
Mm-hmm.
classical allusions, and then also kind of religious, sort of Christian allusions as well. So he sort of has both, and yeah, in some ways he's kind of one of the last like formalists, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Robert Frost like represents like the transition of that from formalism to, um, I guess not being like formalist
Kind of,
because
I guess
he
I
can
think they call it more modern.
yeah more modern. I mean because he's kind of the representation of that. I feel like that transition because earlier in his career he's more formalist. Later, yeah, more modern. Um, you know, whereas like T.S. Eliot, like he like right off the bat, I feel like was way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, yeah,
But
because T.S. Eliot, he's like even if you read the first little bit of The Wasteland, that
mm-hmm,
almost sounds like something from the 50s or 60s or something.
mm-hmm.
Like the
Or like even 70s, like with like John Ashbery and you know
right.
guys like that. So
Because T.S. Eliot, he's talking about the little town and the smoke on the buildings, but
mm-hmm,
something's wrong. You know,
mm-hmm,
that's the
yeah,
thing about T.S. As that's the thing about T.S. Eliot. He has like old school imagery, and this isn't about T.S. Eliot, but he has old school imagery, but something's off. And,
mm-hmm,
and that's kind of where modern. I feel like that's kind of where we get to modernism. It's like the world is magnificent, but something's weird.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
If I could sum it up in simplistic terms, if I could
Right,
be so
right.
simple.
I mean, that's a hey that is a take on Thomas Stearns Eliot certainly. Um,
Yeah.
but we're talking about Edwin Arlington Robinson.
And Edwin Arlington
Yeah,
Robinson is the bridge from your Edgar
yeah,
Allan Poe's,
yeah.
Henry
Right.
Wadsworth
Mm-hmm,
Longfellow's
mm-hmm,
into your
mm-hmm.
T.S. Eliot's, your Robert
Right,
Frost's.
right.
This guy was right there on that cusp.
Right, right. Yeah, and I mean, we both read a very early work from him,
Mm-hmm.
1897. He did live into I think the
The
30s.
30s.
Yeah, like 32 or something like yeah, sometime in the 30s.
His
Um,
later poems were much longer, like
right.
kind of.
Yeah.
I've been heard them described as sort of rambling.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, he has like the man who died twice, which won the Pulitzer. He ended up winning the Pulitzer three times
Mm.
for poetry, which I don't know if we've mentioned that on the podcast today yet, but
Oh
um,
yeah.
one of those was a a book length poem. The man who died twice. So he did different stuff. Like we kind of
Mm-hmm.
are more focused on the earlier stuff. He did do some different things, which would be interesting if we revisited him sometime in the future and kind of read some later works to see what we would then think. Because we're by no means giving like sort of the definitive like this is Edwin Arlington Robinson, but like at this time period with this book, like that
But a lot of his more
that is the
popular
case.
poems are in Children of the Night.
Yeah, and some of the earlier stuff, yeah, absolutely. Even though it didn't win awards, but yeah, they've stood the test of time in that regard.
And yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So hey, I mean Edwin Arlington Robinson, I'm sure you like us probably read him in school, read at least one poem, if not a few, and hey, go dig
this
into
this
them.
guy's one of
Don't
my
be afraid.
This guy
Yeah,
became kind of one of my faves. Like I was reading this, I was like, man, I'm really enjoying this. Like
yeah,
it was like a calm, casual enjoyment. Like I almost enjoyed it, almost like one would enjoy like a bag of trail mix or something, you know.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't. It wasn't necessarily my expectations, but
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
was good along for the ride, you know.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I feel like he's really good. He's very accessible. Um, and so yeah, I think it is just an enjoyable experience. Very easy to pick up and read some Edwin Arlington Robinson poems. You know they're like they'll make you think, they'll stick with you, but like you're not going to be work. It's not a lot of work to read one.
Nope.
Yeah.
But they are
Well,
worthwhile.
yes. But hey, you got any last closing thoughts you wanna throw down?
Hey,
You said it.
what did people used to say? Love, peace, and hair grease, or
Right.
something like that. Did people used to say that back in the
Yeah.
day?
It's something like ass, grass, or gas,
Yeah,
grass, or ass,
that's
or
when they
something like
wanted
that.
a ride.
Yeah.
That's when girls wanted a ride back in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even
That's
have a
true.
car in like ninth grade. I used to be getting girls. I used to get my older friends to take girls home, and I'd be negotiating with the chicks on their behalf. This is not even my car.
That was a different time, kids.
Right? Those were different days.
Right.
I
Yeah.
may have said too much. I may have dated myself.
I don't understand what you're even saying anymore. But hey, I mean, if you like the podcast, like it, subscribe, share it with your mom, your dad, maybe your cousin, maybe someone you don't like, and you can bridge the gap. I don't know. Just share it. Tell your friends. Tell your family.
Just listen to it by yourself if no one else cares. Just you listen to it.
Sure.
Don't
Yeah.
don't worry about what everybody else thinks. If you
Yeah.
like our podcast, you listen to it.
Right. Yeah. That's a good message. All right. Well, hey, Justin signing off.
James signing off. Edwin Arlington Robinson. Check him out. It's worthwhile. And his work is in the public domain, so you don't have to spend any coin. But hey, take care, everybody, and we'll see you later. All right. It was a good, solid episode, I think.
Yeah.
Tight hour, dude. We're getting kind of good at this. I
I
didn't
know we
realize
probably
I
could have
didn't.
wrapped. Yeah.
We could have wrapped probably a little bit sooner. I didn't realize we would get like tight. Like I'm getting like better at just like seeing something. What do I want to say? Say it. What do I want to say? Say it. You know what I mean?